Welcome back. Billy in Phoenix. Hey, Billy, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching. Oh, you're listening to iHeartRadio.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. A quick question for you. How do you think the politics would change if everyone got rid of their affiliation? If they didn't have an R in front of their name or a D or an I, how do you think that would influence politics in general? I did read an article on it, and it was quite fascinating. But I just think now people are going to have to go up there and talk about what they're going to do for you, and instead of relying on their party to pull them out or to vote for them because it's what you do.
Right.
You know, I mean, do that make any sense?
You not only make a lot of sense, you're speaking the language of Thomas Jefferson. This was, and not just Jefferson, many of the founders, they were vigorously opposed to the emergence of political parties prior to roughly 1790. And, Madison wrote about it in Federalist Number 10. Jefferson wrote about it numerous times. Dan Sisson and I wrote a book about this called The American Revolution of 1800. And there's an entire chapter in there chronicling all the founders and framers who suggested that America should basically be a single-party state or a no-party state. And that would be a unique thing in the history of politics. And wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, it was very idealistic, and it didn't work out. The problem is one of faction. It's not, in my opinion, it's not so much a problem of party. And Dan and I have a piece that about how this interrelates with the deep state that will be coming out on Alternet probably tomorrow, alternet.org. But the problem is one of corruption by faction. You have the Democratic Party has been corrupted by the faction of the banks, for example, over the last 30, 40 years. The Republican Party has been corrupted by the faction of the fossil fuel industry, and both have been corrupted by the military-industrial complex. These corrupting influences were referred to by the founders as factions, and when faction corrupts party, and we've got some great quotes about this in the article that'll be in Alternate tomorrow. When faction corrupts party, then you can't have a functioning democratic republic. It just doesn't work, and that's where we're at right now. That's why Jimmy Carter came on this program 3 years ago and said America is no longer a functioning democracy. We are now an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery. And and that quote of his and that soundbite of him saying that to me on this program has pretty much gone viral over the years, and I agree with him. And so how do we? So the question then becomes, how do we purge our parties of faction? Well, faction is always, or almost always, associated with money. I mean, there are some factions that aren't, the abortion faction or the gay faction or something like that. But the factions that are really corrupting, as opposed to merely influencing, are virtually always have to do with money. And so the challenge is, how do you get money out of politics? And Congress passed some great laws to do that in 1973, 74 in the wake of the Nixon scandals. And the Supreme Court came along in 76 with Lewis Powell, newly appointed in 72 by Richard Nixon to the court. Lewis Powell, who wrote the Powell memo, came out and said, no. If billionaires want to give money to politicians, political parties and whatnot, it's totally fine. It's free speech. It's protected free speech behavior by the First Amendment, which had never been the position of the United States before. So the Supreme Court literally made law, and they amplified that in 78 with Bellotti, then they amplified it again in 2010 with Citizens United, and that's where we're at. So if we want to extract the corruption of faction from our political parties, we have to do it by campaign finance laws. And that's right now a really heavy lift, because both parties are very much addicted to the money coming from their factions. Billy, thanks for the call.